Hello, so in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to first of all retouch these donuts over here. I'm going to be doing this in Photoshop, and what we're going to do also is going to be isolating these donuts from this background as well. So let's dive into it. Let's first of all retouch these donuts. So I'm in Photoshop at the moment, got this image here that was donated from one of my students, and the icing is a bit sort of funny on the donut. So what we can do is we can go and we can select some portions of this donut. So we can go over to this tool over here, which is quick selection tool. So I think its default is the magic wand tool. If you long press on it, is the quick selection tool. So what you need to do is you need to go over here and then select some of this icing, for example. And I'm going to remove some of that selection. So this is a little bit more sort of from an intermediate user, by the way. So it's not really for someone who's just starting out with Photoshop. And let's reduce this selection down a bit more because we don't need some of it. All right, so what I'm doing here is to remove the selection, I press Option or Alt on the computer. And to add to the selection, I just click and drag. All right, so I've selected enough here. So what I'm going to do now is going to go and press Command J or Control J on the PC. And this has created a new layer. So that's the new layer that's been created over here. And we have this layer right there. So we can go over to Edit. And we're going to go and use Puppet Warp. So what this does is that you can actually drag these handles out and make this icing look good. So before we do that, we need to select areas in which we don't want it to be shifted. So around here somewhere, for example, about here and here and here. And then we can go in this area here and we can actually shift it outwards. So you can select it and then shift outwards like this. You can also select whole larger areas as well to be shifted out if you just select this larger area here. And I'm going to shift this one out as well. Let's see how we go with this. All right, so we're going to press Return or Enter, and there we go. We've increased our icing, and we made it look a little bit better. Now, looks like it's all filled in quite nicely, and we're going to do the rest here as well now too. So I'm going to duplicate this background layer, because I don't want to just merge this one. I want to keep this as is, as default. So we always have something to go back to if we make a mistake. So I'm going to press Shift on the keyboard and go to Layer and select both layer and the background copy. Right click and go right down here till it says Merge Layers, and it merges those edits that we've just done. So I'm going to use the Puppet tool again here too by using the selection tool. So I'm going to select this bit of icing over here. For example, we've selected way too much, so press Option or Alt on the PC, and we're going to reduce our selection down. So I'm just interested in selecting the icing only. And let's get rid of some of this selection here too, because it's actually operating too good and selecting the donut that we, not just the icing. Here we go. So I removed enough as it is. I might increase this by a little bit more so we can fix this up as well. There we go. So I think that's enough there for the selection. I'm going to go back into Edit. Before we do Edit, by the way, we need to press Control J or Command J to make that as a new layer. And we're going to now go to Edit. We go to Puppet Warp tool, and we do the same thing as before. We select areas that we don't want to shift. So these ones over here, we don't want these to shift at all. About there as well, and we do a furthest extent over there. So let's now warp this node here, and we're going to bring this out a little bit. We can bring this one out as well. I'm going to shift this one out. So you see that we have a lot of control over this tool, which is really cool. We can warp this right out, and we can need to warp this icing back in as well, because otherwise it's going to go over top of where the furthest extent of the donut itself is. So you can see here, these larger squares and rectangles, areas where we can move larger bits out, and the final ones is move smaller points out. So just be aware of that. I'm now going to press return on the Mac, and there we have it. The icing is right up to the edge almost. And now it's time to select both again. So I'm going to press Shift and click on these two layers, right click, and I'm going to merge these two layers together. So merge layers, and now I can go around with this tool here, which is the spot healing tool. And this is the default values for this tool, and I'm going to get rid of some of this icing that is going to be making a bit of, I think someone sort of put their finger in it before, and it heals the icing, which is really cool. So this is actually designed to get rid of pimples and wrinkles and things from people, but it turns out to be an absolute treat for fixing up these donuts. I can also fix this up here too, if we wish, and we might do that another time, but I thought that, just thinking just now, that if you want to fix these up, we can do this another time. Let's now see if we can select this donut to isolate it. So I have my layer here, which is my yellow donut over here, and all the rest of the donuts really. And I'm just going to go here and go to File, Save As, in between all these changes, because you never know that this might, Photoshop might crash, for example. There we go. So now, there's a few ways to select things. You can use a clipping path and use paths, or you could use the selection tool, which is over here, the quick selection tool. You could also use channels as well to select individual channels to see what is the lightest and darkest point. So you could do something like this, and you can use the quick selection tool to work like that. In fact, I think we would just do an easier method of doing it. I'll just go back to RGB. So back to layers, and we're just going to use a quick selection tool here, and we're going to select the donut. I'm not pressing any other buttons here apart from my mouse, and I'm pressing the space bar to go into the hand tool, come back into our normal default tool. And we've selected too much, so I'm pressing Option now to remove some of this area there, clean it up a bit. Let's clean up some of that there too. All right, let's move across here now, pressing Option again to clean up our selection a bit. It's removed a bit too much. And we can add in our other nice goodies on there. Our, what is it called? They are hundreds of thousands or whatever. Sprinkles is what they're called. All right, so there I've got that selected, and check this out. This is very cool. I can now go over to this function here, which is going to make this into a mask. So I click on that, and I turn off my base layer, and I have my donut there. This donut and the other donuts look a bit underexposed. So I'm going to go over to the adjustment layers, and I'm going to go over to exposure, and I'm going to increase my exposure up till it's a little bit brighter. That seems all right. And I'm also going to, what could I do here? I'm going to increase the saturation up a little bit too, by only a small amount, but by about, let's say about 8, and it's looking a lot brighter now, a lot more lively. So what I can do now is that this layer here, which is layer 2, is the yellow donut, and I can also select the other ones another time too, right? So I can actually select these ones individually. All right, it's as simple as going around and adding a new mask. So what I thought I should show you now is that if I now go and turn off my background image, I press Command S to save my work, and I go into Adobe Illustrator, and I create a new File, and mine's going to be A3 in size, and I'm going to click on OK, Create. And check this out. So if I now go over here and create some type of, I don't know, some type of design, for example, I might go down to, give me a sec, I might go down to, not halfway point, let's say halfway point, and I might give like a bit of a blue tinge to it. Now I want to bring my, my donut in, get rid of the stroke, there we go, and I'm going to go over to File, going to go to Place, and then I'll go to my desktop, and I'm going to go to my folder which shows the examples for things, example tutorials, and we go over to donuts, and we're going to click on the PSD file, and you can link this file and then place it. So I'm just going to click once, and here it is, my donut goes into the layout, all really cool, nicely done. So I can now also resize this image down. So I press, so I'm making sure that I'm in the selection tool, it's selected. I click and drag down and press shift at the same time. And what it's doing is that it is resizing the image down in a proper aspect ratio. So I'm decreasing that in size, so I can have multiple donuts there. I can go back to Photoshop and I can do this. So I can go back here and I can now duplicate this donut, the layer, and I'm going to call this one here pink donut. And I'm going to now get rid of this layer mask. So I'm going to click on the layer mask here. So the white is what I see, the black is what is hidden. Go to Edit, I go to Fill, and I fill it as all white. And there I can see all the layers back in again. I go over here and I use that quick selection tool again. Trying to do this nice and quick. So now know how to do this. Right, Photoshop needs to sort of learn what I do want to be in the selection, what I don't want in the selection. Pressing Option to get rid of some of the selection there. Right, it's looking good so far. I could finesse this a little bit more. Get rid of the center part there, because otherwise you don't really see what we've done. And now what I can do is, instead of click on a mask again, what I can do is I can go over to Edit, I can go to Fill, and see how this is white. I can make this as a black, and making sure that I've got the mask selected. I click on OK to make that black. I go press M on the keyboard and I click elsewhere on the image. And now with this still selected here, this mask still selected, press Command I, Control I on the computer, on the PC. And there we have the third donut visible only now, and it's all isolated. I press Command S to save it, and check this out. If I go over to Adobe Illustrator, it says, oh, it's changed. Would you like to update it now? Click on OK, and yes, that pink donut has made its way in. So which is pretty cool. All right, you can do heaps of stuff like that, and that'll be all for this video. Thank you. Bye.